Hello and thank you for joining me on another restoration. Today we have this lovely old Repco Tracer that I bought off an older gentleman a couple of years ago. This one's been sitting in the shed and as you can see it needs a bit of love. It's not too bad, to be honest, for its age. It's probably around 30 years old. Repco in Australia is a brand that's primarily been concerned with auto parts, spare parts, stuff like that, but for a good period they did make bikes. This one is a very much cheaper option that they produce, the Repco Tracer. It's a bit of a mountain bike, very basic, but still a lovely old bike. And what drew me to this one is the blue and white paint scheme. I'll flash it up on screen, but one of the first ever bikes I restored was a Repco super light road bike. Fantastic old bike, quite light, quite decent components, beautiful bike. They don't make them anymore, so it was an absolute beauty for me. But here we are looking at this one. So as you can see, not too bad condition, gross, but look at this, it's barely been ridden. Most of this stuff's original, and I really wanted to keep it this way. I wanted to do the most sympathetic build possible. So you could see there the chain was barely even stretched, it wasn't even up to 0.75. So essentially I'm trying to keep as many things original as possible. I am taking away the cables. They are old galvanized ones and they're just a little bit sticky, not too bad, but just a little bit gross. The outers are still in pretty good condition though, so if I can get away with it, I will be leaving those. Now we're just removing the front wheel. As you can see, it's got little clips, little retainers to keep the wheel nice and straight, so that's a nice little feature, but it does mean that if you were to change this wheel on the road, if you had a flat or something, you'd need an extra 10mm spanner with you as well, so a bit of a pain in the ass, but that's how they did it. Now overall, as I've said, the bike is in fantastic condition for its age. It really doesn't look like it's had a lot of use, it has just been sitting around. In saying that, there are some things that do show just signs of wear, such as the pedals. The bearings are completely gone on those. They are also just cheapo crap pedals, so it could be one or the other. But overall, the components for what price point this bike would have been, which is a very cheap bike I'm assuming, the components are actually not bad. Not bad at all, and the quality is so nice to see, like the Shimano 220 rear derailleur that we're looking at now. Sure, it's the lowest on the rung pretty much these days, but just the nicely stamped housing, just all metal construction, it's just beautiful and I love to see it. This seat, as you'll see later, is one of the few things I did decide to change. I just thought it was cheap, it was uncomfortable, and just didn't quite suit the flow of the bike. So I've gone for a slightly more modern one that still suits the bike, but just makes it a little more comfortable to ride. Now, as cheap as some of these parts are, I still really enjoy them. Just the parts of this time period still had a charm to them. These weren't like too cheap, even though they're Chang stars and are, you know, nothing special by any means. Just the quality of them, the way they come up when they've been cleaned, and just the stamping on them. I actually just really sort of enjoy the look of them, I suppose. Now, why I'm showing you this, if you can see, they've put the stamping in the wrong place. It's like a misprint on the part, so I kind of like stuff like that too, quirky little things that they've stuffed up from factory, but it's just a quirk of the bike, and I like to keep that sort of stuff intact just as a talking point, I suppose. Another example, just nicely pressed. Shimano logos everywhere, even on the clamp. It's really nice to see. And there you go, the pedals just absolutely shot, the bearings are gone, the seals are gone, so they're rusted out inside. So even though I want to keep as much as possible, those are going in the bin. most of this bike does seem to come apart pretty well, but this was very, very seized. I also don't have a decent pedal wrench, which I fixed by buying one during this build, so you'll see that come out later. But for now, we're just letting them soak and hoping that they loosen up a little. You can see there, like it's fine, the condition's okay, but just dirty more than anything else. Dirty and hasn't been serviced in forever. The grease is all dried up. It's just kind of horrible. So all in all, it's coming apart pretty well, but just filthy. I've had a few little struggles with getting pedals cranks off lately. There's been some really welded on ones, so it was nice that even though these have been old as hell, they still just pop straight off, so a bit thankful for that. You can see a bit of water's got in there. The grease is just gone and horrible. And look, we got a little friend. It's a Huntsman Spider, non-lethal. They get quite a bit bigger than this, but this one has unfortunately lived its life in a bottom bracket shell and it's deceased. What a shame. Moving on, getting rid of some of these cables. Like I said, they're going in the bin. Now there are a few components that I do want to keep because they're not in terrible condition, but if I was to sell this on or decided to use it on a regular basis, I probably would swap out. I did want to keep the levers, but if you can see, there are a few cracks in the plastic. There is still a metal shell, so they're strong, but the plastic could break. It still feels okay, but it's just cracked over the years. The same also applies to the tyres. I really like the tyres. They're original, surprisingly. They've even still got some of the little nodules, little rubbery bits on them. There's my dog Banks in the background. Young Banksy just looking a bit sad and not enjoying the hammering. But like I was saying, keeping the tyres and the levers, even though they're a little bit cracked, they're still in decent condition, and I just really wanted to keep everything as original as possible. But if I was to sell it on, I would probably either just mention it or definitely swap out the tyres for something new. I did change the inner tubes too, as well though, so that's not going to explode at least. I'll also note, it's been a pretty crap summer in Melbourne, but these days were particularly warm, especially inside a big tin shed, so enjoy my hairiness. Everything coming apart really nicely here. Actually spoke too soon. The angled nut, I can't remember what it's called. I've gone completely blank, that holds the stem in, is fully stuck. It's rusted shut inside the steerer tube, so we'll deal with that later. Don't even know if I show it, but I did spray some WD-40, some penetrating oil in there, and after a sort of day, it just almost fell out. I had to give it a light tap with a screwdriver, so it wasn't an issue, but that's why it wasn't on there. there we go. Everything taken apart down to the bare frame. Like I said, pretty easy disassembly. I've had a lot worse on a lot newer bikes, and I think that's thanks to the fact that the original owner had kept it inside his shed for a long time, and then I'd done the same. So all in all, it wasn't too bad. So first things first, a bit of steel wool just to get rid of that surface corrosion. We're essentially cleaning away the surface rust. We can't get rid of it entirely, but we're going to just use some steel wool and some polish just to clean it back up, and it comes up a treat. There's really not that much. It's mostly staining. The small amount of pitting that there is can barely be seen after the steel wool. So there we go. I've done the seat post first because I think I do come back later and lube it, stuff like that, but for now I just want to get the frame off the holder and use the stand, use the seat post to hold it in the stand so that it doesn't damage the paint and so I can access the paint. New toy here. Something I enjoy is buying new toys. A new toy for this build though, ultrasonic cleaner, and boy is that thing incredible. You will see the results, but a little bit of simple green detergent degreaser in there, some water, makes a hell of a noise, drills right through your brain, but wow, absolute godsend. Giving everything an absolute thorough clean before I get down to any sort of repair work to the paint. So just giving everything a nice wash with some soapy water, rinsing it all off thoroughly, and then I will get the blower out. So either a hand blower or I've got the compressor just to get rid of all that excess moisture, make sure there's no water sitting inside the frame because we don't want it rusting. Also a good time to plug my t-shirt there, Shift Happens. Nice 9Lives Rides logo on the front. You can get that from my store. Really helps to just keep me going with these videos because there is a lot of work and a lot of editing and a lot of cost involved too. So would love you to support that. You can pick them up at 9livesrides.com, link in the description, or you can just chuck me a couple of bucks to buy a coffee. So any support greatly appreciated, and thank you so much for watching right now. And look at these parts, like they are coming out brand new, better than new probably. They are absolutely pinging. And that's literally just from getting thrown in the ultrasonic, no extra effort, 20 minutes. And they look beautiful, I just couldn't believe it, even the chain, it's brand new. And those weren't even the most impressive parts by far, so just absolutely loving the ultrasonic cleaner. Of course, we want to get the cleaner into as many parts as possible, and it's a good idea to take everything apart as much as you can. So we're going to strip down the rear derailleur a little bit, take off the jockey wheels. They are kind of filthy and they've got some real baked on crud that I'm not sure that the ultrasonic would deal with, or I just don't see the point of putting it through and trying to make it do it when you can just simply scrape it off. So we're going to scrape off what we can, and then they go in the ultrasonic for a bath. Came with this little tea strainer sort of thing for the tiny parts, which is handy. They would just go through the mesh in the basket, so nice little thing. Now a bit of a jump there. That's a front derailleur that I've pulled out, and because it's just fresh out of degreaser, we don't want that staying on there. So I'm just giving it a wash afterwards with some soapy water, and then I'll dry them off thoroughly just to get rid of all that degreaser before we lubricate them and chuck them back on the bike. I will also say that this video might jump around a little bit with the editing, but I've just done it in the order that I did it. And that's because I'm not a shop and things take time, so I might have had to order things in, order new tools, or just felt like a change. Now we move on to the frame. Starting off now, that's how to wash. We're going to go with some scratch and swirl remover. You can use T-cut, just any basic sort of light scratch remover is great. I want to bring this paint up because for the most part it's in beautiful condition. There are obviously some wear to the logos, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. So I've given it a nice buff with the scratch and swirl remover. Move on to some just general polish to get the shine back into the paint. Give that a good buff, a lot of which you don't see. This took probably an hour overall. And then finally with some Auto Glim ceramic spray. So it just helps that water bead off and just gives it a really nice shine, and it actually smells really nice, this stuff too. So even though it doesn't do much, the smell for the frame, it smells lovely while you're working on it, which makes a change from all the other chemicals. So there we go. It has come up beautifully. A lot of those little marks have gone. A couple of small paint chips left, but for the most part there's just a really nice luster to the paint. Now back to the jockey wheels. They've obviously come out of the cleaner. A little bit of, I'm just using some bearing grease just in here, just a little bit, just to keep them rolling nicely before they go back on. And then a little bit of Loctite 243 I like to use. It's a good thread locker. It's not too strong, but it's not too light either. Easily removable. I've just always used 243, so that's what I'm going to continue to do. Never had an issue. Just want to make sure this doesn't fall apart after a few Ks down the road. Now, I just can't believe how nicely that derailleur's come out. It's just absolutely pinging. Looks gorgeous. Bit more just bearing grease, so you could use a more general purpose grease. I just like to use bearing grease. Just chuck that on the spring, wipe it in, make sure it doesn't corrode and keeps moving nicely. We don't want any squeaks or creaks, so that'll keep it nice. Now we've got some copper or anti-seize grease here. I like to put that on the cable guides, because they do seize up. You get galvanic corrosion or whatever, and that will stop that. Jump cut, we're putting in the headset. Cups, pretty straightforward. I would have slapped a little bit of grease onto those before putting them in, but otherwise they just press back in nicely. Now, as soon as I took these headset bearings out, one of the bearings was cracked in half, and just the races in general were crap. And I don't love the races that they come in, because it's sort of just cheaping out on the amount of surface area you're actually getting. So we're going to swap every bearing out, actually, even though I don't show it in this video. Every bearing has a race on this bike, and I've swapped them all out for individual bearings. So there we go, matched them up. Pumped in some grease, and individual bearings galore. I really like the logo on the head tube there too, and also just some of the lug work for a cheaper bike. It's just nice. It's not overstated or anything, but it's nice to see on a basic entry-level bike. Just look at it and how nice all that chrome. I did have to get the steel wool onto it to give it a buff up, even though it went through the cleaner, but it just looks amazing. Absolute mirror finish on it. Actually blows my mind how nice that looks. And I think this is probably my favorite. There you can see the angled nut. Write it in the comments below. Completely forgotten what it's called. That's come out clean. Had to give that a clean up just to get the surface rust off it, but the stem itself looks amazing. Looks brand new. It's silly. It's silly. Handlebars back in. Didn't show it, or the forks actually, but I did give those the same treatment. Washed, polished, cutting compound, all that sort of stuff. Bit of ceramic spray. Just made sure to give everything that bit of love. Now this rear wheel bearing, almost seized. Grindy as hell, just horrible. Obviously had a lot of dirt and just the lubricant had completely come out of it, so we're addressing that. Great jump cut to the other wheel, truing it. Obviously, spoke tension gauge, giving this a true. I think I lost some of the footage of doing the wheels, but long story short, gave them a really good wire brush. As you can see there, mirror finish on those wheels, they look gorgeous. Bearings out, swapped out the bearings for individual bearings, and just, yeah, general tidy up and a true. So those wheels are actually running really true for their age. Spokes are in pretty good nick after a clean, so nothing to really worry about there. Bit of grease everywhere, just using bearing grease on all of this. Oh, there we go. I have also just completed the same process on the rear wheel. New bearings, new lube, and a bit of grease before the free wheel goes back on, which has also come up $1 million, and there's almost no wear to those teeth. It's looking great. There we go, we're starting to nicely go back together now. Rear wheel on, obviously. Chucking the levers on just temporarily at the moment. Now this is another piece that blew me away, how well this came out of the cleaner. The crankset. It's amazing. Absolutely gorgeous. Apart from a quick detail with a detailing brush after it came out of the cleaner, didn't have to do anything, just popped out beautiful. On a more modern bike, I would 100% use a torque wrench on almost all of these, but for a bike like this, just do it the old-fashioned way, go by feel. Look at that, new bearings in that bottom bracket too, individual bearings, came up a treat. And look at the shine on that derailleur, it's gorgeous. Now here we're just using a little bit of silicone grease on the pivots where the springs go. Just something I like to do. Saw it on another channel, decided I'd do it as well. Bit of copper grease, same as on the derailleurs, just keeps everything spinning, makes it easy to adjust. And make sure it isn't going to seize halfway down the track. I've got to stop saying it, but look at how those calipers came up. They just look incredible. Absolutely brand new. Some quality editing there, but re-watching these videos and doing the commentary, I sure notice how many stupid faces I make. It's all part of the process. Watching all this, I'm thinking, this is a lot of work for not a special bike, nothing amazing, not an expensive bike, but still brings me a lot of joy to give new life to something like this and just to keep it out of landfill. And it's still a cool bike, whether it's something you can ride to the pub, down to the park, just keep in the shed as something cool, like a, talking piece. I like just having bikes around the place, love to look at them. So new cables, replacing the old Gal ones with stainless ones because they are cheap as chips these days. Kept most of the outers because they were pretty good. Absolutely no internal resistance, so I thought why bother. I did cut some down because they were just too long from factory and it looked crap. But other than that, kept most of them. Unfortunately, I had to get rid of the dork disc back there. It was a bit yellowed, a bit cracked. Could have replaced it with another one, but I decided just to keep it off and keep it a little bit cleaner looking. Getting an awful lot closer to the end of the build here. And it's pretty much the same as taking it apart. It just went together so well. Obviously, pretty simple bike, pretty simple components, but it's just so nice when things actually go together and you're not sitting there scratching your head for hours on end. So obviously had to get rid of the old grips because they were just munted, absolutely cooked. Found some pretty similar foam ones, so I thought I'd keep that style. Doubt they would have been original to the bike, they might have been, but since I could find a similar style, I thought let's go with that and keep it as close to the original as I could. Here's the new seat I was talking about. A bit more modern. Still kept the original seat clamp, but kind of just helps the flow of the bike a bit more, I thought, and it is more comfy. Almost done now. Bit of copper grease on the pedals to stop them seizing, because it ain't fun when a pedal seizes into your crank. So that will stop that from happening. There's my new pedal tool. So nice to have all that leverage. And the most important part of the whole build, getting the bell back on. This came off a treat as well with a nice polish. And it's just a good sounding bell. There she is in all her glory. Gonna leave you with just a few before and afters and let the bike speak for itself. Thank you so much for watching and look forward to seeing you on the next one.